My family celebrated when the lawyer read my grandfather's will. My brother Dante high-fived my mother because he inherited the $50 million construction empire. My mother Loretta cried tears of joy because she got the 5,000 square foot estate and the fleet of vintage cars. And me. I got a single white envelope containing a one-way plane ticket to Monaco and a rusty iron key. My sister-in-law Jessica laughed so hard she spilled her champagne on the mahogany table, telling me I should probably look for a housekeeping job when I landed. They thought I was being exiled. They thought the old man had finally confirmed I was the disappointment of the family. They were wrong. They did not look closely at the ticket. They did not notice the gold crest embossed on the corner or the security code that signaled a clearance level higher than the president. They thought they were the heirs to the kingdom, but they did not know that the ticket was not for a vacation. It was a summons to the throne. Before I tell you how I returned to buy their entire lives for pennies on the dollar, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been the black sheep who turned out to be the wolf. I am Kamara, 30 years old, and yesterday was the day I buried the only person who ever loved me. The sky over the cemetery was a bruised purple, threatening a storm that matched the hollow ache in my chest. My grandfather Cedric had been a titan of industry, a man who built skyscrapers from nothing but grit and steel. But as I stood at the iron gates of the family burial plot, clutching my coat against the wind, I was not treated like the granddaughter of a legend. I was treated like the help. I stepped toward the black canopy where the VIP seating was arranged. The heavy scent of white lilies was suffocating, mixing with the damp earth. I adjusted the black veil of my fascinator, trying to hide my swollen eyes. I had spent the last 3 nights at the hospital sleeping in a plastic chair holding Grandpa's hand while he took his last breaths. My mother and brother had not visited once. They were too busy calling their tailors to prepare their funeral outfits, to ensure they looked good for the press. "Excuse me, Kamara." A hand with a perfectly manicured French tip pressed against my chest, stopping me in my tracks. It was Jessica, my brother Dante's wife. She was wearing a black designer dress that was far too tight and inappropriate for a funeral clearly chosen to show off the surgery she had charged to the company credit card last month. Her blonde hair was sprayed into a helmet of perfection, and her blue eyes held that familiar passive-aggressive glint that I had come to despise. "Where do you think you are going, sweetie?" Jessica asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I'm going to sit down, Jessica. It is my grandfather's funeral." I tried to step around her, but she sidestepped, blocking my path again with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Oh, honey, no. The front 2 rows are reserved for the immediate family and the board members. You know, the people who actually have a stake in the future of the company. We need to make sure the press gets the right photos for the morning papers. You understand, do you not? We do not want to overcrowd the frame with people who do not fit the image." I stared at her in disbelief. Immediate family. I was his blood. She was the woman who married my brother because she Googled his last name and saw a $sign. "So where am I supposed to sit?" I asked, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. Jessica smiled, pointing a sharp finger toward the back, past the rows of velvet-cushioned chairs, to a few metal folding chairs, set up near the mud where the gravediggers stood. "There is a spot back there next to the security guards and the housekeeping staff. I think Maria is saving a seat for you. You two always got along so well, probably because you have so much in common." My mother Loretta turned around from the front row. She adjusted her massive diamond brooch, looking at me with disdain. "Just go sit in the back, Kamara. Stop making a scene. You are embarrassing us. Dante is about to arrive, and we need the aisle clear." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them that I was the one who managed Grandpa's medication. I was the one who read him the newspaper every morning. But I knew it would not matter. To them, value was measured in stock options and Instagram followers. I walked past the rows of people, whispering past the business partners, who nodded at me with pity, and took my seat on the cold metal chair next to the groundskeeper. He gave me a sad smile and handed me a tissue. He showed me more humanity in 5 seconds than my family had in 30 years. Suddenly, the roar of an engine shattered the solemn silence. A bright orange Lamborghini tore through the cemetery gates, weaving between the headstones before screeching to a halt on the gravel path. My brother Dante. He stepped out wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky, checking his reflection in the car window. He tossed the keys to the valet like he was at a nightclub, not a burial. He strutted down the aisle, high-fiving a few of his frat brothers, who had shown up and flopped into the front seat next to my mother. "Sorry I am late," he announced, loud enough for the priest to pause his prayer. "Had to pick up the new whip. Grandpa would have wanted me to ride in style, right?" My mother patted his hand lovingly. "Of course, baby. You look like a CEO already." I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. Grandpa hated flashiness. He drove the same Lincoln Town car for 20 years. Dante was spitting on his grave before the dirt was even poured. As the ceremony ended, the family lawyer, Mr. Henderson, cleared his throat. He was a solemn man who had served my grandfather for 4 decades. He looked at Dante and my mother with a gaze that I could only describe as icy. "The reading of the last will and testament will take place immediately at the estate office," Mr. Henderson announced. "The immediate family is required to attend." Dante jumped up, rubbing his hands together. "Finally, let us go get what is ours. Come on, Jessica. Daddy is about to get paid." They started moving toward the limousines. I stood up, intending to hail a cab to go home. There was no point in me going to the reading. I knew they would not want me there. "Miss Kamara." Mr. Henderson's voice stopped me. I turned around. "Yes, Mr. Henderson." "You are expected at the reading as well," he said, clutching his briefcase tightly. "Your attendance is mandatory." My mother scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Why? Did Cedric leave her his old book collection? Or maybe his used handkerchiefs?" "She does not need to be there, Henderson. She is not part of the business. It is mandatory, madam." Mr. Henderson repeated his tone, leaving no room for argument. We arrived at the lawyer's office, a room smelling of mahogany and old money. Dante sat at the head of the table, spinning in the leather chair that used to be my grandfather's. Jessica sat on the armrest, massaging his shoulders. My mother poured herself a drink from the crystal decanter, not even waiting for the reading to begin. I sat in the corner on a small wooden chair, clutching my purse. I felt like an intruder in my own history. Mr. Henderson opened the thick leather binder. He adjusted his glasses and began to read. "To my daughter Loretta, I leave the family estate at 44 Oak Creek Lane, along with my personal cash reserves and the collection of vintage automobiles." "Yes," my mother shrieked, clapping her hands. "I knew it. Knew. That house is finally mine. I am going to redo the kitchen immediately. That old wood is so depressing." Mr. Henderson continued, his voice monotone. "To my grandson Dante, I leave the Brooks Construction Group and all its subsidiaries, along with the intellectual property rights and the downtown headquarters." Dante slammed his fist on the table in triumph. "Boom! That is what I am talking about. $50 million, baby. I am the king of this city now. First order of business, we are firing the old board of directors. I need people with vision, not these dinosaurs." Jessica kissed his cheek. "I am so proud of you, baby. We are going to be so rich." Mr. Henderson waited for them to quiet down. He then turned his eyes to me. The room went silent. Dante smirked. "Go on, Henderson. What did he leave the reject?" "A coupon for a therapy session." "To my granddaughter Kamara." Mr. Henderson read, his voice softening slightly. "I leave the contents of this envelope." He slid a thin cream-colored envelope across the polished table. It looked pathetic next to the stacks of deeds and certificates Dante and Loretta had received. I reached out and took it. My hands were shaking. I opened the flap. Inside there were only 2 items. A single plane ticket and a heavy old-fashioned iron key with the number 77 engraved on it. I pulled out the ticket. It was a one-way flight to Monaco departing tonight at 11 p.m. Dante burst out laughing. A plane ticket. He literally told you to get lost. That is classic. Grandpa really said, "Here is a ticket, do not come back." My mother sipped her whiskey, shaking her head with a cruel smile. "It is for the best, Kamara. You never fit in here. Monaco has good hotels. Maybe you can find a job as a maid or a waitress. With your experience filing papers, maybe they will let you work at the front desk if you are lucky. Just do not expect us to send you money when you run out." Jessica giggled. "Do not worry, Kamara. I will take good care of your room. I have been wanting to turn it into a walk-in closet for my shoes. This works out perfectly." I looked down at the ticket. My family saw a dismissal. But I saw something else. I had worked in compliance for years. I knew details. And I saw the logo printed faintly on the background of the ticket. It was not a commercial airline logo. It was the crest of the Royal Aviation Charter, and the ticket class did not say first. It said sovereign. That class did not exist for the public. It was reserved for heads of state and owners of the fleet. And the key. It was rusty, but the weight of it felt significant. Iron, cold, real. It did not look like a house key. It looked like a vault key. I looked up at Mr. Henderson. He gave me a barely perceptible nod, his eyes communicating a message he could not speak aloud. Trust him. I stood up, sliding the envelope into my bag. I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not beg for a share of the company or the house. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," I said quietly. "Where are you going?" Dante called out, mocking me. "Do not you want to see us celebrate? We are going to pop the good champagne." "Oh wait, you probably have to go pack your little backpack." "Enjoy your inheritance, Dante," I said, my voice steady. "Make sure you read the fine print on those deeds." I walked out of the office, their laughter echoing behind me. They were so busy celebrating their new wealth, they did not realize they had just been handed the anchor and I had been handed the boat. The rain was pouring down in sheets by the time I got back to the family estate. I just wanted to grab my clothes, my laptop, and my few personal treasures before heading to the airport. I was done. I was ready to leave this toxic hellhole forever. But as the taxi pulled up to the driveway, I gasped. My belongings were not in my room. They were scattered across the wet driveway. My clothes were soaked in muddy puddles. My silk blouses were ruined. My books, my only escape during my lonely childhood, were ruining in the rain, their pages swollen and tearing. My diploma, the one I had worked 2 jobs to earn because my mother refused to pay my tuition, was face down in the dirt, the frame shattered. I scrambled out of the taxi, running toward the pile of my life. The cold rain soaked through my coat instantly. "No, no, no," I sobbed, picking up a ruined photo album. It was the only one that had pictures of me and Grandpa fishing together. The water had soaked through, blurring his face. The front door opened. Dante stood there, leaning against the frame, holding a glass of scotch. Jessica was behind him, filming me with her phone, a smirk plastered on her face. "I told you," Kamara, Jessica called out. "I needed the space. The contractors are coming in the morning to start the renovation. I could not have your junk cluttering up my future shoe room." "You threw my things in the mud!" I screamed, the anger finally breaking through my composure. "These are my legal documents, my memories. How could you be so cruel?" Dante took a sip of his drink and shrugged. "It is my house now. Well, Mom's house, but I am the man of the house. We do not want squatters. Consider this an expedited eviction." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled bill. He balled it up and threw it at me. It hit my chest and fell into the mud next to my ruined shoes. "Here is $100. That should cover your taxi to the airport. Go to Monaco, Kamara. Go find some rich old guy to take pity on you. Because you are dead to us." Jessica laughed. "Bye, sweetie. Do not forget to write. Or actually do not." The heavy oak door slammed shut. I heard the lock turn, then the deadbolt. I stood there in the freezing rain, shivering, looking at the house I had grown up in. The house where I had nursed my grandfather in his final days while they partied. The house that was now forbidden to me. I looked down at the $100 bill in the mud. Benjamin Franklin seemed to be staring up at me in judgment. I wiped my face. The tears mixed with the rain. Something inside me snapped. But it was not a break. It was a fusion. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I did not pick up the money. I left it there in the mud. I gathered only my laptop case, which was water-resistant, and the photo album. I left the clothes. I left the shattered diploma. I left the life of the unwanted daughter behind in that driveway. I got back into the taxi. The driver looked at me with wide eyes. "Where to, miss?" he asked. "JFK Airport." I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Private terminal." As the taxi pulled away, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out. It was a text message from a number I did not recognize. The country code was +377. Monaco. I opened the message. Status airborne. Destination Monte Carlo. "We are tracking your arrival, Madam Chairwoman. The Board of Directors of Phoenix Holdings is awaiting your command. Your grandfather prepared everything. The game begins now." I looked out the window as the family estate disappeared into the rainy darkness. Dante thought he had won. He thought he was the king. But as I clutched the iron key in my pocket, I realized the truth. He had inherited the house, but I had inherited the bank that owned the mortgage. I leaned back against the seat, and for the first time in years I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a hunter who just realized the prey has walked into the trap. Monaco, here I come. The taxi dropped me off at the curb of JFK Airport Terminal 4. I stood there for a moment, shivering in the cold, damp air. My coat was heavy with rain, and mud splattered my ankles. I clutched my laptop case to my chest like a shield. Around me, people were rushing with luggage carts, shouting at drivers and hugging loved ones. I felt invisible. I felt like a ghost haunting the living. I looked at the digital ticket on my phone. It had a QR code, but it also had that strange gold crest. I assumed I would have to go to the main counter and beg them to print a boarding pass because my phone screen was cracked from when Dante threw my bag. I walked toward the automatic doors, bracing myself for the bright lights and the judgment of the crowds. I looked like a homeless person who had wandered into an international airport. "Excuse me, miss." A large man in a dark suit stepped in front of me before I could even touch the door handle. He was not TSA. He looked like Secret Service. Earpiece, tailored suit, serious eyes. I flinched, stepping back. "I am sorry. I have a ticket. I am just trying to get to the check-in counter. Please do not kick me out." The man looked at my phone screen, then up at my face. His expression softened instantly. He did not look at me with disgust like my family did. He looked at me with reverence. "We have been expecting you, madam. Please do not use the public entrance. You will catch a cold." He tapped his earpiece. "Target acquired." Escorting the principal to the Sovereign Lounge. He gestured toward a sleek black SUV parked just a few feet away with tinted windows. I hesitated. This felt like a mistake. Maybe Dante had called the cops on me. Maybe this was a trap. "I am not the principal. My name is Kamara. I think you have the wrong person." The man smiled gently. "We do not make mistakes, Miss Brooks. Please, the car is heated." I got in. The warmth hit me instantly, wrapping around my frozen bones. We drove for maybe 5 minutes, bypassing the chaotic terminals and heading toward a secluded part of the airport I did not even know existed. We stopped in front of a glass building that looked more like a modern art museum than an airport terminal. There were no lines, no metal detectors, no screaming children, just silence and marble floors that reflected the soft ambient lighting. A team of 3 staff members stood waiting. One took my muddy bag without flinching. Another handed me a steaming hot towel scented with lavender. "Welcome, madam. Your flight is fueled and ready for departure at your command." I followed them onto the tarmac. Sitting there under the floodlights was not a commercial airliner. It was a Gulfstream G700. It was massive, sleek, and silver, shining like a blade in the night. I had seen these planes in magazines, but I never thought I would be close enough to touch one. I walked up the stairs. My muddy sneakers left faint prints on the plush carpet, but nobody said a word. The interior was unlike anything I had ever seen. It was not just a plane, it was a living room in the sky. Cream-colored leather seats that looked more like thrones, a dining table set with crystal glassware, a bedroom in the back. The air smelled of fresh orchids and expensive leather. I stood in the entryway, dripping water onto the floor, feeling overwhelmingly out of place. I was a fraud. I was the girl who sat next to the help at the funeral. I did not belong here. "You can stop shaking, Kamara. You are safe now." A voice came from one of the leather armchairs. I turned around. A man was sitting there sipping an espresso. He was an older black man with silver hair and a sharp-tailored navy suit. He had the kind of presence that commanded a room without raising a voice. I recognized him immediately. Laurent. He was my grandfather's shadow. For years he had been the legal counsel for the international division, but I had only seen him on video calls or at the company Christmas parties, standing in the back, observing. "Mr. Laurent," I whispered. "What is happening? Why am I here?" He stood up and walked over to me. He did not hug me. He extended a hand and shook mine firmly, treating me like an equal. "You are here because Cedric knew this day would come. He knew they would try to break you. Look at you. You are soaking wet. You are hurt. And you think you have lost everything." I looked down at my feet. "They took everything, Laurent. They took the house, the company, the cars. They even threw my diploma in the mud. I have nothing but this ticket." Laurent chuckled low and deep. It was not a mocking laugh. It was a laugh of genuine amusement. "They took the toys, Kamara. They took the shiny objects that lose value the moment you drive them off the lot. Go to the back. There is a shower and a change of clothes. Cedric had your measurements sent to a tailor in Milan 3 months ago. Get changed. Wash off the mud. We have work to do before we land in Monaco." I did as I was told. The shower was hot and strong, washing away the graveyard dirt and the rain. I scrubbed my skin until it was red, trying to scrub away the feeling of Jessica's pity and Dante's cruelty. When I stepped out, I found a garment bag hanging on the door. Inside was a cream-colored cashmere power suit. It fit me perfectly. It was elegant, professional, and screamed money. I put it on. I looked in the mirror. The sad, wet girl from the funeral was gone. The woman looking back at me looked like she owned the plane. I walked back out to the main cabin. The plane had taken off while I was showering. We were cruising smoothly above the clouds. The city lights of New York were fading behind us. Laurent was sitting at the dining table. He had spread out a series of red leather binders and a laptop. "Sit down, Madam Chairwoman," he said, gesturing to the seat opposite him. I sat down. I touched the leather of the binder. "What is this?" "This," Laurent said, opening the first binder, "is the reality. Your family thinks they inherited an empire. What they actually inherited is a house of cards." He spun the laptop around so I could see the screen. It was a spreadsheet, a very complex one. But I was a compliance officer. I knew how to read numbers. I saw the columns. Assets, liabilities, loans. I scanned the numbers. My eyes widened. Wait, the construction company. It is leveraged at 90%. They owe nearly $60 million in loans. "Correct," Laurent said, taking a sip of his water. "And the estate. The mansion your mother loves so much. It has been refinanced 3 times to cover the operating losses of the company. But who holds the debt?" I asked. "If the bank calls these loans, they will lose everything." Laurent smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. "That is the beauty of it. Commercial banks stopped lending to your grandfather's U.S. entities 5 years ago because they saw Dante was incompetent. So Cedric created a private equity firm in Monaco to buy out the debt. He became his own lender. I looked at the name of the firm on the top of the spreadsheet. Phoenix Holdings. Phoenix Holdings, I read aloud. Who owns Phoenix Holdings? Laurent reached into his briefcase and pulled out a single document. It was a share certificate. It was dated 10 years ago. It certifies that 100% of the voting shares of Phoenix Holdings belong to the beneficiary of the Iron Key Trust. He pointed to the rusty key I had placed on the table. That key opens the vault in Monte Carlo, where the original certificates are kept. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked from the document to Laurent and back to the spreadsheet. So you are saying... I am saying that your brother owns a company that is technically bankrupt. Your mother owns a house that belongs to the bank. And Phoenix Holdings is the bank. Laurent leaned forward, his dark eyes locking onto mine. They treated you like a servant, Kamara. They gave you a plane ticket because they wanted you gone, but in doing so they sent the shark to the only place where the water is deep enough to hunt. He slid a pen across the table. They think they received the assets and you received nothing. The truth is they received the debt. And you are the creditor. You own every brick of that house. You own every beam of that construction site. You own the cars Dante is driving, and right now all of those payments are overdue. I picked up the pen. The weight of it felt good in my hand. I thought about Dante laughing as he threw the $100 bill at me. I thought about Jessica filming me in the rain. So I can call the loans? I asked, my voice steady. You can call the loans, Laurent confirmed. You can seize the assets. You can foreclose on the property. You have absolute power. But Cedric wanted you to have a choice. You can let them keep playing pretend rich for a while, or you can pull the rug out from under them whenever you choose. I looked out the window at the dark Atlantic Ocean below. I took a sip of the sparkling water. It tasted crisp and clean. Let them play for a week, I said. Let them have their parties. Let Dante buy his toys. Let Jessica renovate the room. Let them dig the hole deeper. I looked back at Laurent, and for the first time since my grandfather died, I did not feel grief. I felt power. When we land in Monaco, I want to audit everything. I want to know exactly how much a G-Wagon costs when it is repossessed. Laurent raised his glass in a toast. To the new boss. I clinked my glass against his. To the collection agency. The plane sped forward, carrying me toward a sunrise that would burn my family's fake empire to the ground. The limousine glided through the winding streets of Monte Carlo, like a panther moving through the jungle. The city was a kaleidoscope of wealth. Supercars parked casually on the corners. Women in diamonds walking small dogs that cost more than my tuition. But I did not look out the window with the eyes of a tourist. I looked with the eyes of someone who was beginning to understand that the game I had been playing my whole life was rigged. And finally, I held the controller. We stopped in front of a building that looked more like a cathedral than a bank. There was no signage, no ATM in the lobby. This was the Banque Privée de Monaco. It was where old money went to sleep and wake up doubled. Laurent opened the car door for me. I stepped out onto the cobblestones, clutching my bag. The rusty iron key felt heavy in my pocket. It was warm against my thigh, a constant reminder of the grandfather who had played the long game. We were greeted by a man who introduced himself as Monsieur Dubois. He was dressed in a suit that whispered perfection. He did not ask for my identification. He simply bowed his head. Mademoiselle Brooks. We have been waiting for the bearer of the iron key for a decade. Please follow me. We walked through a lobby of marble in silence. Our footsteps echoed. We took an elevator down past the basement, down into the bedrock of the cliffside. The air grew cooler. The smell of old paper and gold bullion filled the space. We stopped in front of a massive steel door. It was circular and gleaming. Monsieur Dubois typed a code into the keypad, then turned to me. The key, mademoiselle. I reached into my pocket. My hand trembled slightly. I pulled out the rusty piece of iron that my family had laughed at. I inserted it into the single keyhole in the center of the modern steel mechanism. It looked ridiculous. Old versus new, rust versus chrome. But when I turned it, the mechanism engaged. A series of heavy clanks echoed through the vault. The steel door hissed and swung open. Inside, it was not a room filled with piles of cash like in the movies. It was a small library. There was a desk, a leather chair, and walls lined with filing cabinets. I walked in. Laurent stood in the doorway, giving me space. On the desk sat a single leather binder, embossed with a gold phoenix rising from the ashes. Beneath it, the words, Phoenix Holdings. I sat in the chair. It creaked familiarly. It was Grandpa's old chair from his study at home. He had shipped it here. Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them away. I opened the binder. The first page was a letter. My dearest Kamara. If you are reading this, it means they treated you exactly as I feared they would. They chased the shiny things. They chased the appearance of wealth. But you, my brilliant girl, have always understood value. I could not leave the company to you directly because Dante and your mother would have destroyed you with lawsuits. So I did something better. I hollowed it out. I turned the page. And then I saw it. The organizational chart that changed everything. The document detailed the corporate structure. Brooks Construction Group. The company Dante was currently popping champagne over was listed as a subsidiary. But it was a shell. I read the financial statements. The company in New York did not own its headquarters. It leased them. It did not own its heavy machinery. It leased them. It did not even own its brand name or intellectual property. It licensed them. And the lessor. The owner of the building, the machines, the brand. Phoenix Holdings. I flipped through the pages, my breath catching in my throat. Asset list. Item 1. Commercial skyscraper at 55 Hudson Yards. Owner Phoenix Holdings. Item 2. The Brooks family estate at Oak Creek Lane. Owner Phoenix Holdings. Item 3. Intellectual property rights for Brooks Construction. Owner Phoenix Holdings. Item 4. Liquid cash reserves. $300 million. Owner Phoenix Holdings. I looked up at Laurent. My grandfather stripped the company, I whispered. Laurent nodded, stepping into the light. He transferred every tangible asset to Phoenix Holdings 10 years ago. Then he leased them back to the U.S. company at a very high interest rate. Your brother inherited a company that generates revenue, yes, but it owes 90% of that revenue to you. I looked back at the papers. Dante was not a CEO. He was a tenant. And I was the landlord. And the estate, I asked. The house my mother is currently renovating. Laurent smiled. It is company housing. Owned by Phoenix. Your mother signed a lease agreement 5 years ago without reading it, thinking it was tax paperwork. The lease has a clause. The owner can terminate the tenancy with 30 days' notice for any violation of conduct. I sat back in the chair. The power of it washed over me. I was not the poor relation. I was not the charity case. I was the oxygen they breathed. And I could cut off the supply whenever I wanted. But there was one more book on the desk. A black ledger, bound in rough leather. It looked different from the official documents. What is this? I asked, pointing to the black book. Laurent's expression darkened. That is the personal loan register. Your grandfather allowed your family to borrow against their future inheritance from the private equity fund. He wanted to keep a record of exactly who they are. I opened the black ledger. The pages were filled with handwritten entries. Dates, amounts, reasons. I saw Dante's name. Loan. $500,000. Reason gambling debt in Las Vegas. Status unpaid. Loan. $200,000. Reason settlement for paternity suit. Status unpaid. I turned the page to my mother's section. Loretta Brooks. The list was endless. Loan, $50,000. Hermes Birkin bag, emerald green. Loan, $100,000. cosmetic surgery facelift. But then my finger stopped on an entry dated 6 months ago. It was the largest single entry. Loan. $2 million. Reason investment in art gallery for personal associate named Marcus. Age 22. I froze. Marcus. My mother had been crying poverty for years, telling me she could not afford to help me with grad school, telling me we had to tighten our belts. Yet she had funneled $2 million of borrowed money to a boy younger than me to open a fake art gallery. I felt a cold rage settle in my stomach. It was colder than the rain I had stood in. So she has a boyfriend, I said, my voice flat. A boyfriend she is funding with my money. Technically with Phoenix Holdings money, Laurent corrected. But since you are Phoenix Holdings, yes. She is spending your money on her lover while telling you to find a job as a maid. I closed the black ledger. The sound echoed in the quiet vault like a gunshot. I stood up. I picked up the organizational chart and the black ledger. I did not need to see any more. Monsieur Dubois, I said, turning to the banker. Yes, mademoiselle. I need access to the corporate accounts, specifically the accounts receivable. I want to know exactly when the next payment from Brooks Construction is due. It is due tomorrow, mademoiselle, $1.5 million for the quarterly equipment lease. I smiled. A smile that would have terrified Dante if he could see it. Excellent. If the payment is late, even by 1 minute, I want you to trigger the default clause. And what about the personal loans? Laurent asked, nodding toward the black ledger. I ran my hand over the cover of the book. My mother wants to live a life of luxury. She wants to be a socialite. Let us see how social she feels when everyone knows she bought her boyfriend with a credit card she cannot pay off. I looked at Laurent. Get the jet ready. We are not going back to New York yet. I have a video call to make to the board of directors in New York. I think it is time the tenant met the landlord. I walked out of the vault, leaving the rusty key on the desk. I did not need it anymore. I had the combination now, and I was ready to lock them out of their own lives. The first thing I did after leaving the bank vault was not check into a hotel. It was to kill the girl who sat in the back row of the funeral. That girl wore ill-fitting clothes and apologized for taking up space. That girl was dead. I walked into the most exclusive salon in Monte Carlo. The receptionist looked up, ready to turn me away because I was still wearing the clothes I had traveled in, but Laurent stepped in behind me. He whispered 2 words into her ear. Phoenix Holdings. Her attitude shifted instantly. I was ushered into a private glass-walled room overlooking the harbor. I looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was pulled back in a messy bun, frizzy from the New York rain. My eyes looked tired. Cut it all off, I said to the stylist. He hesitated, holding up a strand. Are you sure, madame? You have such length. I am not the same person I was this morning, I replied. I want sharp lines. I want power. I want to look like the person who signs the checks, not the one who asks for them. 40 minutes later, the tired girl was gone. In her place was a woman with a sleek, asymmetrical bob that framed my face like a helmet of war. I went to the boutique downstairs. I did not look at the price tags. I bought a structured white blazer trousers that cost more than my brother's car payments and stilettos that clicked against the marble floor like gunshots. When I walked out, I caught my reflection in a shop window. I finally looked like the owner of an empire. We checked into the diamond suite at the Hôtel de Paris. This was not just a room, it was a palace in the sky, but I did not have time to admire the gold leaf ceilings or the view of the Mediterranean. I turned the dining room into my command center. Laurent set up 3 monitors connected to the secure servers of Phoenix Holdings. 2 junior forensic accountants flown in from Zurich sat at the side table, laptops open, ready for my orders. Okay, let us look at the current liquidity status, I said, pacing the room. One of the accountants typed rapidly. Madam Brooks Construction has requested an emergency draw on their line of credit, $200,000. The request came in 10 minutes ago. It was authorized by Dante Brooks. Laurent looked at me, his finger hovering over the deny button. Shall I block it? We can cite the change in ownership. It will freeze their operations immediately. I walked to the window looking out at the yachts bobbing in the water. I thought about Dante. If I cut him off now, he would panic. He would blame the bank. He would play the victim. I did not want him to play the victim. I wanted him to play the fool. No, I said, turning back to the team. Do not block it. Laurent raised an eyebrow. You want to give him $200,000 of your money. I walked over to the main monitor. I pointed to the debt-to-equity ratio. I want to give him enough rope to hang himself. If we cut the money now, he will say the business failed because of bad luck or strict banks. I want him to fail because of his own greed. I want there to be a paper trail so long and so incriminating that no court in the world will save him. I leaned over the desk, my voice dropping to a whisper. Approve the transfer. In fact, raise the credit limit on the corporate cards. Double it. Remove the restrictions on luxury goods categories. But Madame, the accountant stammered, that is high risk. He has already spent $50,000 on entertainment this month. Exactly, I said, smiling coldly. He thinks he is a king now. Kings do not budget. Let him think the money is infinite. Let him think the well has no bottom, because when he hits the bottom, the fall will be that much harder. Override the safety protocols, set the new limit to $5 million on the black card, and set up a real-time alert for every single transaction. I want to know what he buys before the receipt even prints. The accountant nodded, typing the command. Override authorized. Credit limit increased. The trap is set. Excellent. Now pull up the estate accounts. What is my mother doing? Laurent switched screens. Loretta Brooks. She has been trying to use the platinum card to pay for a contractor. The transaction was declined yesterday due to the freeze we initiated automatically upon Cedric's death. Unfreeze it, I ordered. Laurent looked at me concerned. Kamara, she is renovating your house. You are paying for her to destroy your own property. I am paying for her to increase the value of my asset, I corrected him. Let her put in the marble floors. Let her install the gold fixtures. Let her spend a fortune making that house perfect, because when I evict her, she cannot take the marble floors with her. She is doing the work for me. Authorize the card. But add a clause to the digital user agreement, one that she will click accept on without reading, a clause that states any improvements made to the property become the sole ownership of the landlord immediately upon installation. Done, Laurent said, hitting enter. You are dangerous, Kamara. Cedric would have been terrified of you. He would have been proud, I said, pouring myself a glass of sparkling water. The sun began to set, casting a blood-orange glow over Monaco. The war room was buzzing with the quiet hum of fans and typing. We were building a cage made of money. My phone pinged on the table. It was a notification from Instagram. I had created a burner account to follow my family without them knowing. I picked up the phone. There was a new post from Dante. The photo was high definition. He was standing in the driveway of the estate. The driveway where he had thrown my clothes in the mud less than 24 hours ago. Behind him sat a brand new lime green Lamborghini Aventador. The bow was still on the hood. He was wearing a suit that was too shiny, holding a bottle of champagne. The caption read, King of the City, new toy for the CEO. They said I could not do it, but look at me now. Haters gonna hate. Hashtag blessed, hashtag empire, hashtag new money. I looked at the timestamp, posted 2 minutes ago. Transaction alert on my monitor. Lamborghini dealership, New York, $350,000. Approved. He had bought the car with the credit limit I had just raised. He thought he was spending the company's profits. He was actually signing a confession of embezzlement. I tapped the screen, zooming in on his smug face. He looked so happy, so invincible. He had no idea that the car he was leaning on was technically mine. He had no idea that the gas in the tank was paid for by the sister he had exiled. I double-tapped the photo, giving it a like. Go ahead, Dante, I whispered to the empty room. Drive it fast. Break it in for me. I put the phone down and turned back to Laurent. He bought the car, I said. Laurent nodded, looking at the transaction log. We have the serial number. We can disable the engine remotely whenever you want. Not yet, I said, taking a sip of water. Let him drive it to the shareholder meeting. I want him to arrive in style before he leaves in handcuffs. Now let us talk about Jessica. What is my dear sister-in-law buying with her freedom? I sat back in the leather chair watching the data stream across the screens. The numbers were not just digits anymore. They were coordinates of a drone strike, and my finger was hovering over the launch button. Back in New York, the party of the century was underway at the Gilded Lily, one of the most exclusive rooftop lounges in Manhattan. My brother Dante had rented out the entire VIP section. He wanted the world to know that the new CEO of Brooks Construction had arrived. Through the live feed of the club's security cameras, which I had accessed using the administrator passwords from Phoenix Holdings, I watched them celebrate a victory that did not exist. The table was overflowing with excess. Bottles of Ace of Spades champagne sparkled under the strobe lights. Towers of seafood that nobody was eating sat melting in the heat. Jessica was holding court in the center, surrounded by a group of women who I knew for a fact had made fun of her cheap shoes just last week. Tonight, however, they were listening to her every word, because she was wearing a diamond necklace that belonged to the estate collection. Dante was standing on the leather sofa, pouring champagne onto the floor. "Drink up, everyone," he shouted, his voice slurring slightly. "It is all on me. The Brooks family runs this town now. No more budgets, no more limits." I watched from my hotel room in Monaco, sipping my tea. The contrast was almost poetic. They were loud, messy, and desperate for validation. I was silent, calm, and holding the kill switch. My phone buzzed with a transaction alert. Merchant, the Gilded Lily. Amount $50,000. Item, bottle service and venue fee. I smiled. He was trying to pay the bill. I opened the banking command center on my laptop. I saw the request hit the server. It was pending approval. My finger hovered over the enter key. I could decline it immediately, but that would be too simple. I wanted him to feel the panic. I wanted him to feel the eyes of his fake friends judging him. I waited until the waiter had presented the card machine. I waited until Dante had pulled out the heavy black titanium card with a flourish, making sure everyone saw it. "Run it," he said arrogantly, "and add a $5,000 tip for yourself." The waiter smiled, bowing his head. "Thank you, Mr. Brooks." He inserted the card. The machine beeped. Processing. I hit the button. Actions: suspend account. Reasons: suspected fraud. Location mismatch. On the screen in the club, the waiter's smile faltered. He looked at the machine, then at Dante. "I am sorry, sir. The card was declined." The music seemed to stop in that corner of the room. Jessica froze mid-laugh. The hanger-on friends exchanged awkward glances. "Decline?" Dante laughed nervously. "That is impossible. That is a black card. It has no limit." "You probably inserted it wrong. Do it again." The waiter sighed but obliged. He swiped the card this time. I hit the button again. Action: hard block. Contact bank required. The machine let out a loud, angry buzz. A red light flashed. "Sir, it says do not honor. The bank has flagged the card. Do you have another form of payment?" Dante's face went from flush red to pale white. He patted his pockets. He pulled out his wallet. He tried a second card. The corporate expense card. I blocked that one too. Declined. He tried his personal debit card. Declined. The whispers started. I could hear them through the audio feed. I thought he was rich. Maybe the inheritance is a lie. This is so embarrassing. Jessica stood up, her face twisting in fury. She grabbed Dante's arm, digging her nails into his suit jacket. "Fix this, Dante. You are humiliating me. My friends are watching." "I cannot fix it," Dante hissed, sweat beading on his forehead. "The bank is screwing me. It must be a glitch." The manager of the club walked over. He was a large man with no patience for broke pretenders. "Mr. Brooks, if you cannot pay the tab, I'm going to have to ask you to leave, and I will be calling the police for theft of services." Police. The word hung in the air like a guillotine. Wait. My mother Loretta stepped forward. She looked terrified. She was clutching her Hermes bag, the one she had bought with a loan she did not know she owed me. Do not call the police. We are the Brooks family. We have money. She opened her bag. Her hands were shaking. She began to pull out stacks of cash, rubber-banded bundles of $100 bills. This was the emergency cash reserve from the safe at the house. The money Grandpa had left strictly for property taxes and maintenance. She threw the bundles onto the table. 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. Is this enough? She screeched, her voice cracking. Take it. Just take it and leave us alone. The manager counted the money slowly, deliberately. He held up each bill to the light, checking for counterfeits, while the entire club watched. It was the ultimate degradation. They were not powerful moguls paying with a black card. They were desperate people paying with a bag of cash, like criminals on the run. It is all there, the manager said finally. You are good to go. But please clear the table. We have a reservation for a paying client. Paying client. The insult landed perfectly. Dante grabbed his phone furiously, dialing the number on the back of his black card. I picked up the headset connected to the Phoenix Holdings support line. I deepened my voice slightly, adding a professional distortion filter. Thank you for calling the Sovereign Client Concierge. This is Agent Smith. How can I assist you? Dante screamed into the phone. You people embarrassed me. My card was declined for $50,000. I am Dante Brooks. I own this account. Unfreeze it right now or I will sue you. I paused, typing loudly on my keyboard to simulate work. One moment, Mr. Brooks. Let me check the system. Ah, I see the issue. What is it? Dante snapped. Did you guys mess up? It appears to be a global security update, sir. I lied smoothly. Because of the large transaction amount and the new ownership status of the account, the system triggered a manual verification lock. It is a standard protocol for high net worth individuals to prevent identity theft. We are protecting your money, sir. Protecting my money? Dante sputtered. You made me look like an idiot. When will it be fixed? I am clearing the flag right now, I said. However, the system is undergoing maintenance tonight. It should be fully operational by tomorrow morning. You will have full access to your funds then. We apologize for the inconvenience. So it works tomorrow? Dante asked, his voice desperate for reassurance. Yes, sir. Tomorrow you can spend as much as you like. I hung up. On the screen, I saw Dante turn to Jessica and his mother. It was just a security update, he said, trying to regain his swagger. They are protecting my millions. It will be back on tomorrow. Let us go to another club. I have some cash left. They walked out of the club, leaving the unfinished champagne behind. They looked relieved. They thought it was a glitch. They thought the nightmare was over. I took off the headset. Tomorrow, I whispered. Tomorrow was the day the heavy machinery lease was due. Tomorrow was the day the mortgage payment for the estate was scheduled to be pulled. Tomorrow was not going to be a good day for Dante Brooks. I closed the laptop and walked to the balcony. The lights of Monte Carlo twinkled below. They were beautiful. And unlike the lights of New York, they were real. Let them sleep, I thought. Because when they wake up, the landlord is coming to collect. The sun rose over the skyline of New York City, casting long shadows across the steel skeleton of the Brooks Tower. It was supposed to be the crown jewel of the company, a 40-story luxury condominium complex that would cement our family name in the history books. From my hotel room in Monaco, I pulled up the live feed from the construction site security cameras. I sat on the balcony with a croissant and a cup of tea, ready to watch the demolition of my brother's ego. Dante arrived at the site at 9 a.m. sharp. He was not wearing a hard hat or safety boots. He was wearing a three-piece Italian suit and loafers that cost more than the monthly salary of the workers he was about to address. He stepped out of his new lime green Lamborghini, leaving it parked directly in the loading zone, blocking two cement trucks. He walked onto the dusty site like he was walking a red carpet. I zoomed in on the camera feed. I could see Mr. Jacobson, the site foreman, walking over to him. Mr. Jacobson had been with my grandfather for 30 years. He was a man of integrity, a man who had taught me how to read blueprints when I was just a little girl. Dante did not shake his hand. He waved a piece of paper in Mr. Jacobson's face. I turned up the volume on the audio feed. "Pack your things, Jacobson!" Dante shouted, his voice echoing off the steel beams. "You are fired." Mr. Jacobson looked confused. He took off his hard hat. "Excuse me, Mr. Brooks. We are in the middle of the critical pouring phase. If I leave now, the schedule will slip." "I do not care about the schedule," Dante sneered. "I care about image. You represent the old way of doing things. Grandpa is dead. I am the CEO now. I want a foreman who understands modern aesthetics, not some old man who smells like wet concrete. Get off my site." My blood boiled. Mr. Jacobson had carried this company on his back. Dante turned to the group of workers who had gathered. "Listen up, everyone. There is a new sheriff in town. From now on, we are cutting the lunch breaks to 30 minutes, and if I see anyone slacking off, you will join Jacobson in the unemployment line. Now get back to work." He clapped his hands expectantly, waiting for the hustle and bustle to resume. But it did not. At exactly 9:15 a.m. I hit the execute command on my laptop. Signal sent. Asset shutdown sequence initiated. Suddenly, the deafening roar of the diesel engines on the site went silent. The massive yellow excavators shuddered and stalled. The towering cranes, which had been swinging steel beams through the air, froze in mid-movement. The cement mixers stopped spinning. The silence was instant and terrifying. It was not a quiet silence. It was the silence of a heart stopping. Dante looked around confused. "Why did the noise stop?" he yelled. "I said get back to work. Who turned off the machines?" A worker climbed down from the cab of an excavator. He looked at his dashboard. "I do not know, boss." The screen just went black. "It says remote lockout active." Remote lockout. Dante stormed over to the machine. "What are you talking about? Kick it. Start it up again." Before the worker could answer, a convoy of 3 black heavy-duty trucks rolled onto the site. They were not branded with the Brooks Construction logo. They bore the gold crest of Phoenix Holdings Asset Management. 6 men in tactical vests stepped out. They looked like a SWAT team for heavy machinery. The leader walked straight up to Dante. "Dante Brooks," the leader asked, checking a clipboard. "Yeah, that is me." Dante puffed out his chest. "Who are you and why are your trucks blocking my site?" "I am the recovery agent for Phoenix Holdings. We are here to repossess the fleet." "Repossess?" Dante laughed nervously. "You must be crazy. We own these machines. My grandfather bought them years ago." The agent shook his head calmly. "Incorrect. Your grandfather sold these machines to Phoenix Holdings 10 years ago and leased them back. The lease agreement states clearly that upon the death of the primary signatory, Cedric Brooks, the lease is automatically terminated unless renewed by the new owner within 24 hours. Dante turned pale. "Renewed? Nobody told me to renew anything." The agent continued, ignoring him. "Furthermore, the lease stipulates that any unauthorized personnel attempting to operate the machinery constitutes a breach of contract. You are unauthorized, Mr. Brooks. Boys, load them up." The team moved with military precision. They bypassed the locked ignitions using master keys. One by one, the massive machines roared back to life, but this time, they were being driven by the repo agents onto the flatbed trucks. Dante ran after them, waving his arms like a maniac. "Stop! You cannot take them. We have a concrete pour scheduled for today. If that concrete hardens inside the mixers, it will ruin the whole foundation. You will cost me millions." The agent stopped and looked at Dante with zero sympathy. "That sounds like a tenant problem, not a landlord problem. Please step aside or I will have you removed for interfering with asset recovery." Mr. Jacobson, who was packing his box by the gate, stopped to watch. A small smile appeared on his weathered face. He tipped his hat to the repo agent and walked away whistling. Dante was hyperventilating. His phone started ringing. It was the investors. They must have heard the site was shutting down. He ignored the calls. Wait, Dante pleaded, grabbing the agent's arm. "Can we make a deal? I can pay. I have money. How much to leave them here for just one more week? The agent pulled his arm away. I do not have the authority to negotiate. You have to speak to the director of assets at Phoenix Holdings. He handed Dante a business card. It was thick black cardstock with a single phone number embossed in gold. Call this number. If they say stop, we stop. If not, we take everything down to the last screwdriver. The agent turned his back and signaled for the first crane to be dismantled. Dante stared at the card. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. He looked at his shiny Lamborghini, then at the empty, silent construction site. The king of the city was ruling over a graveyard. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number. In my hotel room in Monaco, my secure line began to ring. I put on my headset. I opened the voice modulation software on my laptop. I adjusted the pitch to lower my voice and add a metallic distortion, making me sound like a computer-generated nightmare. I took a sip of tea. I watched the screen as Dante held the phone to his ear, sweating in his expensive suit. I clicked answer. Phoenix Holdings, Director of Asset Management speaking. Identify yourself. Dante's voice came through trembling. Hello. This is Dante Brooks, CEO of Brooks Construction. There has been a misunderstanding. Your men are taking my machines. I need you to tell them to stop. I leaned back in my chair. Mr. Brooks, there is no misunderstanding. You failed to renew the lease. You fired the site safety officer, Mr. Jacobson, which is another violation of our contract. And your credit rating has just been flagged for suspicious activity at a nightclub last night. You are a high-risk client. Dante stammered. Look, I can fix all of that. I have the money. My grandfather left me this company. Your grandfather left you a company that rents from us, I interrupted. And right now you are behind on rent. Please, Dante begged. If you take the machines, the project dies. If the project dies, I lose the investors. I will lose everything. Just name your price. I will pay double. I smiled. The desperation was sweet. Double, you say? Yes, double. Just tell them to stop. Very well, Mr. Brooks. I will grant you a temporary extension. 48 hours. But the fee is not double. It is triple. And I want it wired directly to our offshore account within the hour. If the money is not there by 10 a.m., the trucks leave. Triple. Dante choked. That is almost $2 million. You have 58 minutes, Mr. Brooks. Do you want to be a CEO? Or do you want to be a failure? I hung up before he could answer. I watched on the screen as Dante screamed in frustration, kicking the tire of his Lamborghini. He frantically started dialing his bank. He was going to drain the company's operating cash to pay me. He was going to use the money meant for the workers' wages to rent back the machines he thought he owned. He was digging his own grave with a shovel I had just rented to him. I signaled the repo agent via text. Hold position. Wait for the wire transfer. Then give him his toys back for 2 days. We will come back for them later. I took off the headset. My hair was perfect. My tea was still warm. And my brother was about to bankrupt himself to pay me for equipment I already owned. I turned to Laurent. Send a bonus to Mr. Jacobson, too. And offer him a consulting contract with Phoenix. I think he deserves a paid vacation to Monaco. The game was getting fun. While Dante was busy begging for his construction equipment back, my sister-in-law Jessica was waging her own war at the family estate. Her target was my childhood bedroom. For years she had complained that my room was too big for a single girl. She said it was wasted space. Now that I was gone, she wasted no time in claiming it. I switched the camera feed on my monitor from the construction site to the interior security cameras of the mansion. The timestamp showed it was 10:15 in the morning. Jessica was standing in the hallway wearing a matching pastel yoga set that cost more than a mortgage payment. She was holding a green smoothie in one hand and pointing a manicured finger at the door to my room. Tear it down, she commanded. Standing next to her was Mike, a local contractor who had done work for my grandfather for years. Mike looked uncomfortable. He was holding a sledgehammer, but he was not swinging it. Mrs. Brooks, Mike said hesitantly. Are you sure about this? We have not pulled the permits yet, and honestly, that wall looks load-bearing. I really think we should wait for the architect to review the blueprints. Jessica rolled her eyes, letting out an exaggerated sigh. Mike, do not be such a coward. It is just drywall. I want an open-concept yoga studio and gym. I need the natural light from Kamara's room to flow into the hallway. Just knock it down. I am paying you to smash things, not to think. But the permits, Mike insisted. If the city inspector drives by and sees the dumpster outside without a permit posted in the window, we could get in big trouble. I am the lady of this house, Jessica snapped, her voice rising an octave. My husband owns this town. The inspectors work for us. Do you really think they are going to find the Brooks family? Now swing the hammer, or I will find someone who will. Mike sighed. He adjusted his grip on the sledgehammer. He looked at my bedroom door one last time, almost apologetically. All right, Mrs. Brooks. You are the boss. He swung. The sound of the sledgehammer crashing through the plaster was loud and violent. It felt like a physical blow to my chest, even from thousands of miles away. That room was my sanctuary. It was where I hid when my mother ignored me. It was where I studied for law school while my family partied downstairs. And now Jessica was erasing it to make room for her Peloton bike and yoga mats. I watched as the dust settled. Mike took another swing, then another. A large hole opened up in the wall, revealing the wooden beams underneath. I leaned closer to my screen. I smiled. Mike was right. That was a load-bearing wall. My grandfather had told me specifically when I was 12 years old never to hang heavy shelves on that wall because it supported the entire roof structure of the east wing. But Jessica did not know that. And she did not care. Keep going, she cheered, clapping her hands. Open it up. I want it all gone by lunch. I picked up my phone. I did not call Jessica. I called the City Department of Buildings. Specifically, I called the direct line of Mr. Vance, the chief inspector. He was a stickler for the rules, a man who hated entitled rich people who thought they were above the code. I had tipped him off via an anonymous email 10 minutes ago, attached with a time-stamped photo of the unpermitted dumpster in the driveway. I watched the camera feed. 10 minutes passed. Mike was sweating, knocking out chunks of the wall. The ceiling began to make a groaning sound. Did you hear that? Mike asked, pausing. It is just the house settling, Jessica dismissed. Keep going. Suddenly the front doorbell rang. It was not a polite ring. It was a long, authoritative press. Jessica groaned. Who is that now? Probably the caterers for tonight. She walked to the front door and threw it open. Standing there was not a caterer. It was Mr. Vance, wearing a neon yellow safety vest and holding a clipboard. Behind him were two police officers. Jessica stepped back, confused. Can I help you, Mrs. Brooks? Mr. Vance said, his voice booming. I am Chief Inspector Vance. We received a report of unpermitted structural demolition at this address. Jessica crossed her arms. We are just doing a little remodeling. It is interior work. We do not need a permit for that. Mr. Vance pushed past her, walking straight into the hallway. He saw the dust. He saw the hole in the wall. He saw the exposed beams that were beginning to buckle under the weight of the roof. His face turned red. Stop, he yelled at Mike. Stop immediately. Put the hammer down. Mike dropped the hammer, looking relieved. I told her, Inspector. I told her we needed a permit. Mr. Vance turned to Jessica. You are removing a Class A load-bearing support wall without shoring up the ceiling. Do you have any idea what you have done? You have compromised the structural integrity of the entire east wing. The roof could collapse at any moment. Jessica scoffed. Do not be dramatic. It is just a wall. It is a violation of State Building Code Section 402, Mr. Vance barked. Officer, issue a stop work order immediately. Red tag the building. Jessica laughed nervously. Red tag. What does that mean? It means this house is now uninhabitable, Mr. Vance said, slapping a bright red sticker onto the pristine white wall of the hallway. It means you cannot live here until the structural damage is repaired and inspected. Everyone out. Now. What? Jessica shrieked. You are kicking me out of my own house. Do you know who my husband is? I do not care if your husband is the Pope, Mr. Vance said, writing furiously on a ticket. You created a dangerous condition, and since you proceeded without a permit, the fine is triple the standard rate. He tore off the ticket and handed it to her. That is a citation for $200,000. Plus, you will need to hire a structural engineer to draft an emergency stabilization plan before you are allowed back inside. $200,000, Jessica screamed, looking at the ticket like it was toxic waste. That is insane. I am not paying that. Then we will place a lien on the property, Mr. Vance said calmly. And since the property is owned by a corporate entity according to my records, the lien will automatically trigger a default on your occupancy agreement. Jessica froze. How did he know about the corporate ownership? Get out, Mr. Vance ordered, pointing to the door. Or I will have you arrested for reckless endangerment. Jessica looked at Mike, who was already packing up his tools and running for the door. She looked at the hole in the wall. She looked at the red sticker that ruined her aesthetic. She grabbed her purse and ran out onto the front porch. The police officers began taping yellow caution tape across the front door. The beautiful mansion, the symbol of her status, now looked like a crime scene. I watched on the screen as Jessica stood in the driveway. Her yoga outfit was covered in drywall dust. Her hair was a mess. She pulled out her phone and dialed Dante. Dante, she screamed into the phone, hysterical. You have to come home. The city kicked us out. They red-tagged the house. I could hear Dante's voice on the other end shouting over the noise of the construction site. What do you mean kicked out? I am dealing with a crisis here too. They took the machines, Jessica. They took the excavators. Jessica was not listening. She stared up at the window of my bedroom, the room she had tried to destroy, the room that had fought back. Her eyes narrowed. A look of dawn realization crossed her face. The inspector showed up 10 minutes after we started, she whispered. He knew exactly where to look. He knew about the corporate ownership. She screamed at the phone, her voice breaking with paranoia. It is her, Dante. It is Kamara. She did this. She called them. I know she did. Dante yelled back. You are crazy. She is on a plane to Monaco. She is crying in a cheap hotel room right now. No, Jessica yelled, throwing a rock at the house. She is watching us. I can feel it. That witch cursed this house. She am the house, Dante. She looked directly into the security camera lens above the garage door. For a second, our eyes met across the digital divide. I sat in my hotel room in Monaco and took another sip of my tea. You are right, Jessica, I whispered to the screen. I am watching. And I am not crying. I typed a message to Mr. Vance on my secure phone. Thank you, Inspector. Please ensure the red tag remains in place for at least a week. I want the safety inspection to be very thorough. Mr. Vance replied instantly. Understood, Madam Chairwoman. Safety is our top priority. I leaned back. My childhood bedroom was gone, destroyed by her greed. But in its place stood a $200,000 fine and a homeless sister-in-law. I would say that was a fair trade. The silence in the Brooks estate was deafening. It was not the peaceful silence of a library. It was the terrifying silence of an abandoned ship taking on water. The servants were gone. The chef had packed his knives and left 2 days ago when his paycheck bounced. The cleaning crew had stopped coming, leaving dust bunnies to gather in the corners of the grand ballroom. Dante sat at the kitchen island staring at his laptop screen. His eyes were bloodshot. He had not slept in 48 hours. The table was covered in urgent notices. Past due. Final warning. Legal action imminent. The credit freeze I had initiated was working like a poison in the veins of the family finances. Without the corporate cards, Dante could not pay the suppliers. Without the suppliers, the construction sites were dead. Without progress on the sites, the bank loans were triggering default clauses. It was a domino effect, and I was the one who had pushed the first piece. Loretta walked into the kitchen. She looked aged. Her face was devoid of makeup and her hands were trembling. "We need cash, Dante," she whispered. "The electric company just called. They are cutting the power at midnight. We cannot live in the dark. What will the neighbors think?" Dante slammed his laptop shut. "I do not have cash, Mom. The accounts are frozen. The investors are ghosting me. I need $50,000 just to keep the lights on, and I do not even have $50. Loretta straightened her back. A look of desperate determination crossed her face. "I will fix this. I will save us." She turned and marched up the grand staircase toward her master suite. I switched the camera feed to follow her. She walked into her walk-in closet, pushing past the racks of designer dresses she could no longer fit into. She knelt before the large wall safe hidden behind a painting of herself. She spun the dial. Click, click, click. The heavy door swung open. Inside, sitting on velvet cushions, was the Brooks family jewelry collection. It was the only thing Grandpa had not put into the trust. Or so she thought. She pulled out the emerald necklace, the diamond tennis bracelets, the sapphire ring that was supposedly worn by a French queen. She piled them into a shopping bag. "I am going to sell them," she muttered to herself. "These are worth millions. Cedric always said they were our insurance policy. Well, I am cashing in the policy." She called a private appraiser. "Mr. Sterling." A man who dealt in high-end acquisitions for discreet clients. He arrived an hour later, setting up his loop and scale on the dining room table. Loretta watched him greedily. "The emerald necklace alone is insured for $500,000, she bragged, pouring him a glass of tap water because they had run out of bottled water. Mr. Sterling did not speak. He picked up the necklace. He held it to the light. He took out a diamond tester and touched the stone. Silence. He frowned. He picked up the sapphire ring. He tested it. He put down his tools and sighed. He looked at Loretta with a mixture of annoyance and pity. "Mrs. Brooks, I do not appreciate having my time wasted." Loretta gasped. "Wasted? That is a royal sapphire," Madam Mr. Sterling said, cold and sharp. "This is glass. High-quality lead crystal perhaps, but glass nonetheless. And the setting is gold-plated brass, not solid 18-karat gold." Loretta laughed nervously. "That is impossible. My husband gave me these. He told me they were investments." Mr. Sterling stood up, packing his bag. "Then your husband was either a fool or he was playing a very long joke on you. These are costume pieces. Very good replicas, likely made for travel, so the real ones could be kept safe. The entire pile is worth maybe $500 at a pawn shop." He walked out, leaving Loretta standing over the pile of fake glitter. I watched her collapse onto the floor. She screamed, a primal scream of betrayal. "He knew," she sobbed. "He knew I would try to sell them. He knew I would choose money over his memory." I took a sip of my tea in Monaco. Grandpa Cedric was a genius. He knew that the moment he died, Loretta would try to liquidate his legacy to buy handbags, so he had replaced every single piece years ago. The real collection was sitting in the vault downstairs in my building, safe and sound. Back in the kitchen, Dante's phone pinged. An email. He opened it. "Sender Anonymous Investment Group. Subject Acquisition Offer." Dante read it aloud, his voice shaking. "Dear Mr. Brooks, we are aware of your liquidity crisis. We represent a private equity firm interested in acquiring a controlling stake in Brooks Construction. We are offering a lifeline." He scrolled down to the number. "We offer to purchase 51% of the company for $2 million. This will clear your immediate debts and allow you to remain as a figurehead CEO. $2 million? Dante scoffed. "The company is worth $50 million. This is robbery." Loretta walked into the kitchen, her eyes red and puffy. She looked at the email. "Take it," she whispered. What Dante yelled. "Mom, that is pennies. Take it." Loretta screamed, slamming her hand on the counter. "The jewelry is fake, Dante. It is all fake. We have nothing. If you do not take this money, we will be on the street by Tuesday." Dante looked at the screen. The mouse cursor hovered over the reply button. He was cornered. He was broke. And he was terrified. He typed, We need to meet. Who are you? The reply came instantly. We will meet tomorrow night. At the governor's charity gala. Look for the gold phoenix. Dante stared at the screen. He had an invitation to the gala, but he had planned to skip it because he could not afford a tuxedo rental. Now he had no choice. The next evening, the governor's charity gala was in full swing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It was the event of the season. The red carpet was swarming with paparazzi. Billionaires, politicians, and celebrities climbed the stairs flashing million-dollar smiles. Dante and Loretta arrived in a hired sedan. Not a limousine, a sedan. Loretta was wearing a dress from 3 seasons ago because her credit cards were declined at the boutique. Dante was wearing a suit that was slightly too tight. They looked desperate. They looked like they were hunting. They walked the red carpet, but the photographers barely flashed their bulbs. The press smelled failure on them. Inside the ballroom was a sea of silk and diamonds. Dante scanned the room looking for anyone who might be the mysterious investor. "Where are they?" he hissed at Loretta. "They said, look for the gold phoenix. What does that even mean?" Suddenly a hush fell over the room, the kind of silence that happens when royalty enters. The heavy double doors at the top of the grand staircase swung open. A woman stepped out. She was wearing a gown that looked like it was made of liquid gold. It clung to her body like a second skin cascading down the stairs in a train that shimmered under the chandeliers. The bodice was encrusted with thousands of real crystals forming the subtle shape of a bird rising in flight. Her hair was cut in a sharp, fierce bob. Her lips were painted a deep blood red. It was me. I stood at the top of the stairs looking down at the crowd. I was not Kamara, the quiet girl in the corner. I was Kamara, the storm. On my arm stood the governor himself. He was smiling at me, whispering a joke into my ear. The crowd gasped. "Who is that? Is that a model? No, wait. Is that the Brooks girl?" Dante dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the floor, but he did not notice. "Kamara," he breathed. Loretta squinted, her glasses sliding down her nose. "It cannot be. Look at that dress. That is a custom Givenchy. That costs more than our house. Where did she get the money?" Jessica, who had snuck in using an old pass, grabbed Dante's arm. "She is an escort," she hissed venomously. "That is the only explanation. She went to Monaco and found some old billionaire to sponsor her. Look at her. She is selling herself. That is disgusting." Loretta nodded vigorously, seizing onto the lie. "Yes. That must be it. She is a high-class hooker now. Oh, the shame. My daughter is a prostitute." I began to descend the stairs. Every eye was on me. The governor held my hand, guiding me down. The paparazzi went wild. Flashbulbs erupted like lightning. Dante pushed through the crowd, dragging Loretta and Jessica with him. He wanted to confront me. He wanted to shame me. He wanted to assert his dominance. He stepped right into my path at the bottom of the stairs. "Kamara!" he barked, trying to sound authoritative, but sounding only shrill. "What are you doing here? And who paid for that dress? Did you spend the taxi money I gave you on a rental?" The governor looked at Dante with distaste. "Do you know this man, Kamara?" I stopped. I looked at Dante. I looked at his cheap suit. I looked at Loretta's fake pearls. I looked at Jessica's jealous rage. I looked at them not with anger, but with the indifference of a statue. I turned to the governor. "No, Governor. I do not know them. They appear to be some fans who have had too much to drink." Dante turned purple. "Fans. I am your brother. I am the CEO of Brooks Construction." I leaned in closer to Dante so only he could hear. My voice was low and smooth like velvet wrapped around a dagger. "The CEO of Brooks Construction owns his machines, Dante. You are just a tenant. And by the way, I received your email accepting the buyout meeting. But I am afraid the price has gone down." Dante froze. His eyes widened as the realization hit him like a freight train. You are the investor." I stood up straight and signaled to my personal security detail. 2 massive men stepped forward. "These people are harassing me," I said calmly. "Please remove them from the VIP area and ensure they do not enter the ballroom. I am allergic to desperation." "Kamara." "Wait!" Loretta screamed, reaching for my hand. My security guard blocked her, pushing her back gently but firmly. "Ma'am, step back." I took the governor's arm and walked past them. I did not look back. I heard them shouting. I heard the camera shutters clicking, capturing their humiliation. I walked into the ballroom, leaving my family on the other side of the velvet rope where they belonged. The investor had arrived, and the acquisition was going to be hostile. The morning of the shareholder meeting dawned with a sky the color of bruised iron. It was fitting weather for an execution. I sat in the back of my chauffeured Maybach, watching the rain streak against the tinted windows as we pulled up to the Brooks Tower, the building I now owned but had not yet claimed. Up on the 45th floor inside the boardroom that my grandfather had designed with imported Italian marble and mahogany, my brother Dante was currently pacing like a trapped animal. I had tapped into the audio feed of the room via my phone. I could hear his nervous breathing. I could hear the murmur of the 20 board members who were tired, angry, and demanding answers. Dante cleared his throat. I could imagine him smoothing down his tie, trying to channel a confidence he did not possess. "Ladies and gentlemen, please settle down." Dante's voice quavered slightly. "I know the past few days have been turbulent. The construction site shutdown was a misunderstanding with a vendor. A clerical error, really. But I have solved it." A board member spoke up. It sounded like Mr. Sterling, the oldest member of the board. "Solved it?" Mr. Sterling scoffed. "The stock price has dropped 40% in 3 days. Our credit rating is junk. And we hear rumors that you are selling the company. Is that true?" Dante laughed nervously. "Not selling. No, no. I have secured a strategic partnership. A mysterious angel investor has agreed to inject capital. They believe in my vision. They believe in the Brooks legacy. They are coming here today to sign the papers. We are going to be richer than ever." I signaled to my driver. It was time. I stepped out of the car. I was not wearing the gold gown from the gala. Today was business. I wore a white tailored suit sharp enough to cut glass. My heels clicked against the pavement, a rhythmic countdown to Dante's destruction. I walked into the lobby. The security guard, a man named Ralph, who used to sneak me candy when I was a child, looked up. His eyes widened. "Miss Kamara," he stammered. "I thought they said you were in Monaco." I smiled at him. I was Ralph. But I came back to take out the trash. I swiped my keycard. The system flashed red. "Access denied." Dante had deactivated my clearance. I pulled out my phone and opened the Phoenix Holdings admin app. I tapped one button. Override system lock. The turnstile beeped green. "Welcome, chairwoman." I rode the elevator up alone, watching the numbers climb. Floor 10, floor 20, floor 40. My heart was beating steady and slow. This was the moment I had replayed in my head 1,000 times since the funeral. The elevator doors opened directly into the boardroom lobby. I could hear Dante's voice getting louder. "They should be here any minute. This investor is top tier. They demand respect. So when they walk in, I want everyone to stand up." I walked to the heavy double doors. I did not knock. I pushed them open with both hands. The heavy wood swung back, crashing against the stops with a thunderous boom. Every head in the room turned. Dante froze mid-sentence. His hand was raised in a gesture of triumph that instantly withered into confusion. "Kamara." He blinked, rubbing his eyes as if he were seeing a ghost. "What are you doing here?" I did not answer. I walked into the room. The silence was absolute. The only sound was the click of my heels on the marble floor. Click, click, click. I walked past the gaping board members. I walked past Mr. Sterling, who looked like he was about to have a heart stroke. I walked straight to the head of the table. to the massive leather chair that had been my grandfather's throne, the chair Dante had been sitting in just moments ago. Dante stood there paralyzed as I approached. "Move," I whispered. Dante snapped out of his trance, his face twisted into an ugly mask of rage. "Are you insane?" he shouted. "You cannot be in here. This is a closed meeting for shareholders and the new investor. Get out. Security. Someone call security." He looked around the room, but nobody moved. The board members were staring at me. They saw the suit, they saw the haircut, they saw the energy radiating off me. They realized before Dante did that the atmosphere had shifted. "I said call security," Dante screamed, his voice cracking. "She is trespassing. She is a disgruntled former employee." Mr. Henderson, the family lawyer who had been sitting quietly in the corner, stood up. He walked over to Dante. "Mr. Brooks, I would advise you to lower your voice." Dante spun on him. "Shut up, Henderson. You are fired too. Get her out of here. The investor will be here any second, and I do not want them to see this trash." I laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "Oh, Dante, you really are slow, aren't you?" I placed my hand on the back of the leather chair. "There is no other investor coming." Dante looked at the door, then back at me. "What? But the email." "The gold phoenix." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a brooch, a gold phoenix with diamond eyes. I pinned it to the lapel of my white blazer. "I am the gold phoenix, Dante." The room erupted in gasps. Mr. Sterling dropped his pen. Dante shook his head violently. "No, that is impossible. You are broke. Mom said you are an escort. You cannot be the investor. You do not have $2 million. Laurent walked in from the hallway holding a briefcase. He stood next to me. "She does not need $2 million, Mr. Brooks." Laurent announced, his voice projecting to the back of the room. "Because she is not just the investor. She is the owner of Phoenix Holdings, the entity that holds the mortgage on this building, the lease on your equipment, and the debt that is currently crushing this company." Dante backed away, stumbling over his own feet. "Phoenix Holdings," he whispered. "Grandpa's private fund." "Yes," I said, stepping forward. "Grandpa left the company to you, but he left the bank to me." I pulled out the chair at the head of the table. "So when I tell you to move, Dante, I am not asking as your sister. I am asking as your landlord, and your creditor, and your boss." Dante looked at the board members. He looked for an ally, but they were all looking at me with a mixture of fear and respect. They knew who held the power now. Dante slumped. He looked small. He stepped aside. I sat down. The leather was still warm from his body. I placed my hands on the mahogany table. I looked down the long table at the faces of the men and women who had watched me grow up and done nothing when my family abused me. "Shall we begin?" I asked. Dante stood awkwardly to the side. "Fine," he spat. "So you bought the debt. Congratulations. So, you are the partner. Where is the check? Give me the $2 million and let us get back to work. I am still the CEO. You are just the money." I looked at Laurent. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a remote control. He handed it to me. I pointed it at the large projection screen at the front of the room. "There is no check, Dante," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "And you are not the CEO." I pressed the button. The screen flickered to life. It did not show a partnership agreement. It showed a spreadsheet, a very specific spreadsheet with black and red columns. The title of the document was displayed in large, bold letters. "The Black Ledger. Audit of Misappropriated Funds." Dante's face went white. Whiter than my suit. "What is that?" he choked out. "This," I said, standing up and walking toward the screen, "is the reason there will be no buyout." I pointed to the first column. Date January 4th. Amount $50,000. Recipient, the Bellagio Casino, Las Vegas. Labeled in the company books as concrete supplies. The board members gasped. Mr. Sterling stood up. Is this true? He demanded. I clicked the remote. A scanned copy of the casino marker with Dante's signature appeared. I clicked again. Date February 14th. Amount $12,000. Recipient Serenity Spa and Wellness. Labeled in the books as Site Safety Consultation. I looked at Dante. Since when does site safety involve hot stone massages and Botox injections for your wife? I asked. Dante was shaking. He tried to grab the laptop connected to the projector. Turn it off, he screamed. That is private. You hacked my accounts. I signaled to the security guard Ralph. He stepped forward, blocking Dante. I am not done, I said. I clicked again. Date March 1st. Amount $2 million. Recipient, the Marcus Gallery. Labeled as Office Art Procurement. I turned to the board. $2 million. Funneled to a shell company owned by a 22-year-old man who happens to be our mother's personal trainer. The room went into chaos. People were shouting. Mr. Sterling was clutching his chest. This is embezzlement, Mr. Sterling shouted, pointing a shaking finger at Dante. This is grand larceny. You stole from us. You stole from the pension fund. Dante backed into the corner. It was a loan, he stammered, sweat pouring down his face. I was going to pay it back. I am the owner. I can do what I want. Wrong, I said. I walked over to him. I stood inches from his face. You are not the owner. You are a fiduciary. And you breached your duty. I turned back to the room. Phoenix Holdings is not purchasing a 51% stake. That offer is rescinded. I looked at Laurent. Execute the default clause. Laurent nodded. Based on the evidence of criminal mismanagement and insolvency, Phoenix Holdings is exercising its right to immediate foreclosure. We are seizing 100% of the assets of Brooks Construction to satisfy the outstanding debt. Dante looked at me, his eyes wide with terror. Seizing? You mean, you are taking it all, without paying me? I smiled. I am paying you, Dante. I am paying you with the one thing you deserve. Justice. I pressed a button on the intercom on the table. Send them in. The doors at the back of the room burst open. It was not security. It was 6 agents in navy blue windbreakers. On the back of their jackets, in bright yellow letters, were 3 letters that make every white-collar criminal's blood run cold. FBI. The lead agent walked in, his badge raised. Dante Brooks, he announced. Dante looked for an escape. He looked at the window. He looked at the side door, but there was nowhere to go. Dante Brooks. The agent repeated, walking briskly toward him. You are under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and embezzlement. Dante screamed. No, no, my sister. She is doing this. She framed me. The agent grabbed Dante's arm, twisting it behind his back. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut echoed in the silent room. Click, click. You have the right to remain silent, the agent recited. Dante looked at me as he was dragged toward the door. He was crying now, ugly, sobbing tears. Camera, please, help me. I am your brother. Do not let them take me. Mom will die. Please. I stood by the head of the table. I watched him struggle. I did not blink. I looked at the agent. Take him away. He is disrupting my meeting. The agents dragged him out. His screams faded down the hallway. I turned back to the stunned board of directors. I smoothed the lapel of my white jacket. I sat down in the big leather chair. I folded my hands on the table. Now that the distraction has been removed, I said, my voice calm and commanding. Let us discuss the restructuring of my company. Mr. Sterling sat down slowly. He looked at me with a newfound reverence. Yes, Madam Chairwoman. Where do we begin? We begin, I said, picking up the gavel my grandfather used to use with the truth. The heavy oak doors of the boardroom swung shut behind the FBI agents, cutting off Dante's desperate screams. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. The board members sat frozen in their chairs, too terrified to move or speak. They looked at me not as a 20-something girl, but as a force of nature that had just leveled the building. But there was one person left to deal with. My mother, Loretta. She had been standing near the wall, trembling as she watched her golden child being dragged away in handcuffs. Now she moved. She did not run out the door. She ran toward me. She threw herself onto the marble floor at my feet. Her designer dress meant for the gala was now stained with the dust of her own failure. She grabbed the hem of my white trousers, sobbing uncontrollably. "Kamara," she wailed. "Kamara, please. You have to stop this. He is your brother. Call them back. Tell them it was a mistake. You have the power. I know you do." I looked down at her. This woman who had spent my entire life telling me I was worthless was now begging for my mercy. "Stand up, Loretta," I said, my voice cold. "You are embarrassing yourself." She did not stand. She clutched my leg tighter. "I am your mother," she cried, using the one weapon she thought she still had. "I gave birth to you. I carried you for 9 months. Does that mean nothing to you? Family is everything, Kamara. We forgive each other. That is what families do." I felt a surge of rage so hot it almost burned my throat. I looked at the board members. They were watching, uncomfortable but captivated. "Family," I repeated quietly. "You want to talk about family?" I signaled to Laurent. He stepped forward and handed me a yellowed document. It was old, fragile, and stained with age. I pulled my leg away from her grasp and took a step back. "You talk about family, Loretta, but let us look at the record." I held up the document. "Do you recognize this?" I asked. Loretta looked up, wiping her mascara-stained eyes. She squinted at the paper. Her face went pale. Paler than when the FBI had walked in. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No. Cedric destroyed that. He promised me he burned it." "Grandpa lied," I said. "He kept it. He kept it to remind himself of exactly who you are." I turned to the board members, holding the document up for them to see. "This is an admission form for the St. Jude Home for Unwanted Children, dated 25 years ago." I looked back at my mother. "I was 5 years old. You told me we were going for ice cream. You packed a small suitcase for me. You drove me to the orphanage. You walked me to the front steps, and you told the nun that you could not handle me anymore. You said I was difficult. You said I was taking resources away from Dante. You signed the surrender papers." Loretta covered her ears, screaming. "Stop. Stop it." I did not stop. "I sat on those steps for 6 hours, waiting for you to come back out. But you had already left. You went shopping. It was Grandpa who found me. He drove all over the city until he found the car. He stormed into the orphanage and tore up the papers. He brought me home." My voice broke slightly, but I steeled myself. "That night I heard you screaming at him. You told him that if he brought me back you would never love me. You said I was a burden. And for 25 years you kept that promise. You never loved me." I threw the yellowed paper at her. It fluttered down, landing on her shoulder like a dead leaf. "So do not talk to me about family. You did not raise a daughter. You raised a victim. And now the victim has grown up and she has the checkbook." Loretta looked up at me. The mask of the grieving mother fell away, replaced by the true face of a narcissist. Her eyes narrowed into slits of pure hatred. "You ungrateful witch," she hissed. "I should have left you there. You were always cold. You were always a curse on this family." I smiled, a smile devoid of warmth. "Maybe I am a curse, Mother, but I am a rich curse. And you are a poor woman with no home, no son, and no jewelry." I turned to security. "Escort Mrs. Brooks out of the building, and inform the front desk at the hotel that her credit card on file is no longer valid. She can sleep on a park bench for all I care. It will give her time to reflect on the value of family." Loretta screamed curses at me as the guards dragged her out, kicking and screaming. She sounded like a banshee. I watched her go. I felt a weight lift off my chest. A weight I had been carrying since I was 5 years old, sitting on those cold stone steps. I turned my attention to the corner of the room. There was one person left. Jessica. She was standing near the window trying to make herself invisible. She had watched her husband get arrested and her mother-in-law get destroyed. Now she was trying to calculate her survival odds. When my eyes landed on her, she straightened her dress and forced a smile. It was a terrifying smile. "Kamara," she said, stepping forward, her voice trembling. "Listen, I know things have been bad, but I want you to know I never agreed with them. Dante forced me. He is a monster. I am so glad you exposed him." I stared at her. The audacity was breathtaking. "Really, Jessica?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You seemed very happy to help him throw my clothes in the mud yesterday. You seemed very happy to try and destroy my bedroom this morning." Jessica waved her hand dismissively. "I was brainwashed. I was a victim too, Kamara. We women have to stick together, right? Sisters." She took a step closer, lowering her voice. "Look, I am going to divorce him. Obviously, I cannot be married to a criminal. Maybe you and I can work something out. I know a lot of secrets about the company. I can help you run things. We can be a team." I laughed. It was a genuine laugh this time. "Oh, Jessica, you really think you have leverage, don't you?" I walked back to the head of the table. I picked up a manila envelope that had been sitting under the black ledger. "You are going to divorce him?" I asked. "Yes, absolutely," Jessica said, nodding vigorously. "Irreconcilable differences." "That is funny," I said, opening the envelope, "because Dante is not the only one who has been busy." I pulled out a stack of high-resolution photographs. I tossed them onto the table. They slid across the polished wood, stopping right in front of Jessica. They were photos taken by a private investigator over the last 3 months. Jessica entering a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city. Jessica kissing a man in the parking lot of a gym. Jessica handing that same man envelopes of cash. The man was not Dante. He was muscular, tanned, and wearing a tight tank top. "His name is Rico, isn't it?" I asked. "Your personal trainer." "The one you paid with the corporate expense account under the label Health and Wellness Consulting." Jessica stared at the photos. Her face went gray. How she whispered. "Grandpa had eyes everywhere," I said. "He knew you were cheating on Dante 6 months ago. He wanted to tell Dante, but he knew Dante was too blinded by your fake blonde hair to believe him. So he kept the evidence for me." Suddenly, the side door opened. 2 agents were leading Dante out. They had paused in the doorway because the elevator was taking too long. Dante was sobbing, but when he heard my voice, he looked up. He saw the photos on the table. Even from across the room, he recognized the man. "Rico," he choked out. "That is my trainer." I looked at Dante. "Yes, Dante. While you were busy stealing from the company to buy her jewelry, she was busy paying her boyfriend with your stolen money." Dante let out a sound that was not human. It was the howl of a wounded animal. He looked at Jessica, his eyes bulging with betrayal. "You cheated on me," he screamed, struggling against the agents. "I gave you everything. I went to jail for you." Jessica spun around, her survival instinct kicking in. "You gave me nothing," she screamed back. "You are a loser, Dante." "You were always a loser compared to your grandfather. Rico is twice the man you are. At least he can pay for dinner without his card getting declined." Dante lunged at her, but the agents held him back, dragging him into the elevator. His screams of Jessica echoed down the shaft until the doors closed. I turned back to Jessica. "Well, that settles the divorce," I said calmly. Jessica straightened her jacket, trying to regain some dignity. "Fine. So I cheated. Half of marriages end in divorce. I still have rights. The prenup says I get $2 million for every year of marriage. We have been married 3 years. That is $6 million. Cut me a check and I will leave." I looked at Laurent. He was smiling. "Mr. Henderson, would you like to do the honors?" I asked the lawyer. Mr. Henderson stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. "Actually, Mrs. Brooks," he said, "Clause 4 Section B of your prenuptial agreement specifically states that any proven infidelity renders the financial payout null and void. Furthermore, the use of company funds to facilitate said infidelity constitutes theft. He handed her a document. You get nothing. Zero. In fact, we are suing you for the reimbursement of the $50,000 you spent on Mr. Rico. Jessica looked at the lawyer, then at me. Nothing, she whispered. But I have nowhere to go. My parents won't take me back. I shrugged. Maybe Rico has a couch you can crash on. Although without the money, I doubt he will be very interested. Security, remove her. The guards grabbed Jessica by the arms. She did not scream like Loretta. She just went limp, defeated. The gold digger had hit bedrock and found only granite. As the doors closed behind her, leaving me alone in the boardroom with the stunned directors, I walked to the window. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking. A ray of sunlight hit the spire of the Empire State Building. I turned back to the room. My mother is gone. My brother is in custody. My sister-in-law is on the street. I sat down in the leather chair. Now we can finally get some work done. Who has the quarterly projections? Mr. Sterling stood up. He bowed his head slightly. Right here, Madam Chairwoman. I smiled. It was done. The house was clean, and for the first time in my life, the air tasted sweet. The weeks following the arrest were a blur of gavels and movers. I did not keep the company. I did not keep the house. I did not keep the cars. To me, those things were not assets. They were artifacts of a time when I was invisible. They were monuments to my family's greed, and I wanted to tear them down brick by brick. I hired an auction house to liquidate everything. The event was held in the grand ballroom of the estate, the very room where my mother had once hosted her pretentious galas. But this time, the guests were not her fake friends. They were serious collectors and investors who cared about value, not status. I stood on the balcony watching the proceedings. Lot number 42, a vintage Rolls-Royce Phantom, sold to the gentleman in the front row for $300,000. Lot number 55, a collection of designer handbags, sold for $40,000. I watched as strangers bought my mother's vanity and my brother's ego. It was cleansing. Every time the gavel banged, it felt like a shackle breaking off my wrists. When the auction was over, the house was empty. The marble floors echoed with silence. The walls where Jessica had tried to hang her art were bare. The closet where my mother hid her fake jewels was open and dark. I walked through the empty rooms one last time. I felt nothing. No nostalgia, no sadness, just the cool relief of closure. The proceeds from the auction were substantial. After paying off the creditors and the legal fees, there was still a significant surplus. Millions of dollars that Dante and Loretta had squandered in their minds, but never actually touched. I took a check for $1 million. I drove to the St. Jude Home for Unwanted Children, the same building where my mother had left me on the steps 25 years ago. The building looked the same. Old brick, peeling paint. I walked into the director's office. She was a kind woman named Sister Mary, who had been there when I was a child. She did not recognize the woman in the white suit standing before her. "Can I help you, miss?" she asked. I handed her the check. "This is for the children who are waiting," I said. "Use it to fix the roof, buy them new beds, and please tell them that being left behind is not the end of their story. Sometimes it is just the beginning of their strength." Sister Mary looked at the check. She covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I am just a girl who got picked up," I said. I turned and walked away, leaving the past on those steps where it belonged. But there was one more piece of business. I drove to the small apartment complex where Mr. Jacobson, the old foreman, lived. He had been unemployed since Dante fired him. He opened the door wearing a worn-out flannel shirt. He looked tired. "Miss Kamara," he said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Mr. Jacobson," I said, "I am building something new. Not in New York, in Monaco. I am starting a foundation to teach financial literacy to underprivileged youth. I need a director of operations, someone I can trust, someone who knows how to build things that last. Mr. Jacobson looked at me confused. Me? But I am just a construction foreman. You are the only honest man I know, I said. And honesty is the only currency I trade in now. The salary is triple what you made at Brooks Construction. And it comes with a villa with a sea view. He smiled. The wrinkles around his eyes deepened. When do we leave? Tomorrow, I said. Pack light. We are flying sovereign class. We flew out the next morning. As the plane climbed over the Atlantic, leaving the skyline of New York behind, I looked down at the city. Somewhere down there, my brother was sitting in a holding cell. Somewhere down there, my mother and sister-in-law were learning how to survive in the real world. I ordered a glass of champagne. I toasted to the empty seat opposite me. Goodbye, Brooks family, I whispered. The plane banked toward the east, chasing the sunrise. 6 months later. The morning sun in Monaco hits the water in a way that makes the whole world look like it has been dipped in gold. I sat on the terrace of my villa overlooking the harbor. The air smelled of jasmine and sea salt. It was quiet, a peaceful, expensive silence that I had earned. My life was different now. I spent my days managing the Phoenix Foundation. We had already opened 3 centers across Europe. Mr. Jacobson was thriving in his new role, wearing linen suits and charming the local French bakery owners. I was free, but the ghosts of the past still tried to haunt me. My housekeeper placed a silver tray on the table. On it sat a single letter and my phone. The letter had a New York postmark. The return address was the Federal Correctional Institution at Otisville. It was from Dante. I picked up the envelope. The paper felt cheap and gritty. I used a silver letter opener to slice it open. The handwriting was messy, frantic. Dear Kamara, I hope you are happy. You won. I am sitting in a 6x8 cell with a guy named Butcher. The food is slop. I have lost 20 pounds. Look, I have had a lot of time to think. I know I was rough on you. I know I made mistakes. But we are family. You cannot leave me here to rot. I need money for the commissary. I need a better lawyer. The public defender is an idiot. Please, Kamara. Just send me 50,000. That is nothing to you. Just enough to get me an appeal. If you get me out, I promise I will sign over my rights to everything. I will disappear. Just help me. I am your big brother. Remember when I taught you to ride a bike? Please. Love, Dante. I stared at the words. He remembered teaching me to ride a bike. But he forgot the time he pushed me off it and laughed when I skinned my knees. He forgot the time he stole my college savings to buy a watch. He was still trying to manipulate me, using memories that he had tainted years ago. He had not changed. He was just hungry. I put the letter down. My phone buzzed. A text message. It was from a number I had blocked, but my new carrier had let it through as a spam notification. It was my mother, Kamara. It is Mom. I am working at a grocery store in Queens. My feet are swollen. The manager yells at me if I sit down. I am 60 years old. I should not be doing this. Jessica left town with some trucker. I am all alone. I saw your picture in a magazine. You look beautiful. Please, honey, just a few $1,000s. I found a small apartment, but I need a deposit. I miss you. I love you. I looked at the screen. The woman who had spent $2 million on a boyfriend now needed rent money. The woman who told me to be a maid was now bagging groceries. The universe has a dark sense of humor. I picked up my gold lighter. I held the flame to the corner of Dante's letter. I watched the cheap paper curl and blacken. I watched his desperate words turn to ash. The flame danced in the sea breeze. I dropped the burning paper into the ashtray and watched it crumble into nothingness. I picked up my phone. I did not reply. I did not send money. I simply pressed block. Then I went into my settings and changed my number completely. I took a sip of my espresso. A young man walked onto the terrace. He was handsome, kind, and he knew nothing of my past. He was an architect I had hired to design the new wing of the orphanage. Ready for the meeting, Kamara? He asked, smiling. I stood up, smoothing my silk dress. I looked at the ashes in the tray, then I looked at the bright blue horizon. Yes, I said. I am ready. I walked away from the terrace, leaving the ashes to be blown away by the wind. I never looked back. My name is Kamara. I was the unwanted daughter, the scapegoat, the invisible girl. But now I am the author of my own life. And in this new chapter there are no villains, only victory. If you have ever had to burn a bridge to save yourself, let me know in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe that living well is the best revenge. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, you are not defined by the people who could not love you. You are defined by the courage it took to leave them behind. The cemetery in Monaco is not like the one in New York. There is no mud. There is no noise from the highway. There are only white marble statues looking out over the Mediterranean Sea and the scent of wild rosemary growing between the stones. It took 3 months and a team of international lawyers to have my grandfather's remains exhumed and transported here. My family in New York did not even notice. They were too busy fighting public defenders and eviction notices to care about an empty grave. I stood before the new mausoleum. It was simple, elegant, and carved from the same white stone as the cliffs below. The inscription was short. Cedric Brooks, builder, visionary, father. I placed a single white lily on the cold stone. We did it, Grandpa, I whispered. The accounts are balanced. The debts are settled. The wind caught the edge of my silk scarf, whipping it around my face. I closed my eyes, and for a moment I could smell his old pipe tobacco. I could hear his gravelly voice telling me that the loudest person in the room is usually the weakest. For years I thought his legacy was the company. I thought it was the skyscrapers, the bank accounts, the tangible things that men like Dante would kill for. But standing here in the quiet sunlight, I realized the truth. The company was just a machine. The money was just fuel. His real legacy was the lesson he taught me in that bank vault. He taught me that true power is not about controlling others. It is about not being controlled by them. He gave me the key not to open a door to wealth, but to lock the door against toxicity. My family wanted the inheritance because they wanted to buy things. They wanted validation. They wanted to fill the empty holes in their souls with designer clothes and fast cars. I wanted the inheritance because I wanted freedom. I ran my fingers over his name one last time. Rest now, I said. I will take it from here. I turned away from the grave. I did not walk with my head down anymore. I walked with the rhythm of the waves crashing below. I walked down the winding stone path to the private marina where the water was a deep, impossible blue. Laurent was waiting for me at the end of the dock. He was standing next to a vessel that looked like a sculpture floating on water. It was a 100-foot yacht, sleek and silver. I had named it the Sovereign, a reminder of the ticket that started it all. Laurent smiled as I approached. "Everything is ready, Madam Chairwoman," he said. "The crew is prepped. The course is set for the Amalfi Coast." I stepped onto the gangway. The teak wood felt solid beneath my feet. I looked back at the city of Monte Carlo rising up the hillside. It was a city of gamblers. People came here to bet everything on a spin of the wheel, hoping to get rich quick. My brother was a gambler. He bet on entitlement and he lost. I was not a gambler. I was an investor. I invested in myself when no one else would. I walked to the bow of the ship. I gripped the railing. The engines hummed to life, a low vibration that traveled through my body. The lines were cast off. The yacht began to pull away from the dock, cutting through the water with effortless grace. I watched the shore recede. I watched the mausoleum become a white speck on the cliff. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the salty air. Money is not the destination. Money is just the vehicle. It gives you the option to walk away. It gives you the ability to say no. It gives you the power to protect your peace. My mother is stocking shelves. My brother is sitting in a cell. They are prisoners of their own choices. I am standing on the deck of my own ship, sailing into a horizon that belongs only to me. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I looked at it one last time. Then I threw it over the railing. I watched it splash into the white wake of the ship, sinking down into the deep blue silence. No more calls, no more debts, no more ghosts. I looked up at the sun. It was bright. It was warm, and it was shining on a woman who was finally free. Full speed ahead, I said to the wind. The screen fades to black. This story serves as a powerful reminder that sharing DNA does not grant a license for abuse. Kamara's journey illustrates that true power lies in self-respect and financial independence. For years, she allowed her family to underestimate her, but she silently prepared for her moment. The narrative demonstrates that we teach people how to treat us. When kindness is met with constant cruelty and exploitation, the healthiest choice is often to sever ties completely. Being alone is far better than being surrounded by people who only value you for what you can provide. Your worth is not determined by your family's opinion, but by your own resilience. Hit the like button if you agree that peace is more important than toxic loyalty, and subscribe for more stories about reclaiming your power. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you love to save yourself? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. Remember, you are the captain of your own life. Do not let anyone else steer your ship. Thank you for watching.